Good morning. I will call the public safety meeting to order for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. Note that Senator Brock Smith, Representative Graber are both excused, and I will ask John if you will please provide a review of the day's agenda.
Mr. Co-Chair, members of the subcommittee, you'll enter into a work session for a state police federal grant, and then you'll return to an informational hearing on the Department of Corrections primary budget bill for today. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Borden. Open a work session on a Oregon State Police sex offender registration and notification grant. LFO overview, please.
Mr. Co-Chair and members of the subcommittee, the Oregon State Police is here for approval to apply for a grant to the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Office of Sex Offender Sentencing and Monitoring, Apprehension, Registration, and Tracking in the amount of $400,000 to support an Adam Walsh Act implementation grant. It's a competitive grant. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Borden. Director Joyce, will you please join us? And Das. Sorry, John.
That's fine. Jumped the gun last week and then.
Good morning, co-chairs Broadman, Evans, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Sean Joyce. I'm the Director of the Criminal Justice Information Services Division with the Oregon State Police. Today, I'm requesting approval for application submission to the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Office of Sex Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking, also known as a SMART Office, for fiscal year 2025 for the Adam Walsh Implementation Grant in the amount of $400,000. The grant opportunity provides funding to assist eligible states, the District of Columbia, U.S. territories, and federally recognized Indian tribal governments with implementation and ongoing maintenance of requirements under the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act of 2006. The Adam Walsh Implementation Grant Program, administered by the SMART Office, supports projects that help jurisdictions implement the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, also known as SORNA. This grant funds improvements to sex offender registry systems, aiding in the ongoing implementation of SORNA standards. The objectives of the Adam Walsh Act are to assist jurisdictions in effectively implementing and maintaining SORNA, providing training and technical support, and promoting information sharing across states, tribes, territories, and the District of Columbia. Launched in 2008, the Adam Walsh Grant has been awarded to the Oregon State Police 11 out of the 13 years we've applied. The grant does not require any matching funds from the state. If awarded, the funds will be used to cover costs associated with an operations and policy analyst who will assist in interpreting Oregon Department of Justice opinions, existing Oregon revised statutes, and Oregon administrative rules. This analysis helps inform policy recommendations and supports our ongoing SORNA compliance and implementation efforts. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Joyce? Do we have a DAS recommendation?
Yeah, good morning, co-chairs and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jonathan Bennett with the DAS Chief Financial Office, and we recommend that you approve the request.
Great, thank you. Mr. Borden, do we have an LFO recommendation?
Mr. Co-Chair, LFO recommends approval of the request. Thank you.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Co-Chair?
Just enjoy my moment. I move, talking to the cameras, I move to approve the LFO recommendation.
We have a motion to approve the LFO recommendation. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion passes. I will assign this to Co-Chair Evans to bring to full Joint Ways and Means Committee and close the work session.
Thank you, sir.
I will open an informational meeting on House Bill 5004 with the Department of Corrections. Director Reese and whoever else is joining for the first part of this. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Rodman, Co-Chair Evans, members of the committee. My name is Mike Reese, and I'm the Director of the Department of Corrections. I'm going to quickly move us through the last two slides of yesterday's presentation, and then we'll have Assistant Director Thom Martin present on our administrative services. As you can see from this slide, WorkSource centers. I briefly talked about this in my overview of the agency. These are small employment centers in our institutions. They're doing phenomenal work. They're connecting adults in custody to jobs once they're released from custody or job training. It's working. That's the good news, and it's a great partnership. And speaking of partnerships, I just wanted to show you a slide that shows the vibrant relationship we have with partners in the community, nonprofits, other agencies. These are folks that help us do the good work of reducing recidivism by giving adults in custody the resources they need to be successful. And if you want to contact Larry Bennett, here's his contact information.
Co-chair.
Thank you. So, thank you, Co-Chair. I have a couple of questions that can be answered offline, but one of the strangest things that Oregon does, and we do a lot of strange things, is we pour money into training folks to go do things that they actually can't do on the outside because of their criminal history. Firefighting, for example. We train folks to get excited about doing wildland firefighting, and I understand sometimes they even get a little bit of structural experience, but because the fire and police have rules about not having a felony, they can't actually get the job. Other states, Oklahoma being one of them, is basically looking at experimental opportunities for folks who are in a particular program that can basically prove their way back into a relationship of trust to have a temporary opportunity to, and if they blow it, then they go back to jail, but if they don't, then they get to be a firefighter or whatever. One of the things I'm hoping we can do in the next little bit is work with the employment department as technologies and other things take our fancy. There's still some jobs out there that require hard labor, outside work, teamwork, kinds of things that I know a lot of folks who come out are looking for in terms of camaraderie, et cetera. And I don't know where we are in terms of the expungement conversations, but a couple years ago we had started some of those. I'd like to reconnect and see where we're at for specific jobs, so that literally for the folks we think are going to come back out, as a part of their plan, not only is it, all right, here's the education you need, here's the job you want, but if there's an obstacle, we actually have a plan to get around that obstacle for them. So just wanted to put that down. That's why I held it over till today, because to me, the work source piece, once we can actually move the line to show that we can get folks back onto the side of the ledger paying the taxes to help support the other programs, I think you're going to have a lot more buy-in for some of the other programs. So,
Thank you. And so now we'll move into a presentation on administrative services, and Assistant Director Thom Martin will take it over.
Thank you, Director.
Good morning, Co-Chairs Brodman and Evans and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Thom Martin, Assistant Director for Administrative Services for the Department of Corrections. The Administrative Services Division is comprised of 4 units and has 191 positions. Facility Services, Distribution Services, Information Technology, and our department's Research and Data and Decision Support Unit. Admin Services budget is $181.1 million, including $84.2 million in general funds and $96.9 million in other funds. I'll speak at more depth of some of the responsibilities of these units in the coming slides. Distribution Services operates 4 warehouses throughout the state with a budget of $22.4 million, providing goods to all DOC locations and administrative locations. Distribution Services maintains an average daily inventory of $9.5 million in goods and supplies for the safe and secure operations of DOC institutions and other locations. Distribution Services distributes just over $1.6 million in product a month. And beyond the daily operations of the warehouses and trucking services, Distribution Services also plays a key logistics role in the department and other state agencies during emergencies. As part of our shared services effort, Distribution Services provides warehouse space and transportation of emergency supplies and other to other agencies, including DOJ, OYA, OCE, OHA, DHS, OEM, and the DAS and Oregon State Police Motor Pools. We also operate 5 commissaries throughout the state. Commissaries offer more than 1,600 items for adults in custody to purchase weekly, including hygiene products, snacks, art supplies, musical instruments, and clothing. Commissary is other funded and does not use general fund dollars. After covering operating expenses, all profits are deposited into the Inmate Welfare Fund, which is a dedicated account that benefits the AIC population by enhancing activities and programs within the institutions. During the 23-25 biennium, Facility Services has to date completed over 75 construction, infrastructure, camera, and radio projects, which totaled approximately $40 million. These projects were completed at 12 correctional institutions and 3 administrative support facilities across the state. Great strides are made every day to address the deferred maintenance needs list. In the last year, we were able to begin and continue to make improvements to institutions as seen in this photo, which are complete replacements of the domestic water heaters. The old boilers were removed at the Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem. The maintenance budgets for DOC facilities are generally insufficient to address the deterioration associated with 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week institutions and related facilities that range in age from 18 years to 100 years in age. I was thinking this morning on the way in, 100 years in age of a building like this would equal to 300 years in age at a OSP because of the use. An analysis completed by a consulting firm in 2023 of the remaining deferred maintenance items from the 2017 full facilities conditions assessment estimated a total of $626 million of priority 1 items that should be addressed within 6 years. And for reference, priority 1 is defined as being critical to health, safety, and the likelihood of rapid deterioration. Our total estimated deferred maintenance from the 2023 analysis was $823 million. As stated, our current facilities conditions assessment is 8 years old and needs to be updated for accuracy and current costs. A fresh facility conditions assessment will be completed in 2025, starts next week, which will properly identify, prioritize current deferred maintenance needs at all locations. The underground infrastructure was not observed or quantified in the 2017 conditions assessment and will be identified in the current conditions assessment. Many of our current repairs, unknown repairs, are happening with underground things that are happening today, pipes bursting, deteriorating under slabs, things like that, things we didn't assess or plan for in the past. A new facility-wide facility conditions assessment will be completed. We also had a facility-wide HVAC assessment that was completed in 2024 that calls for about $230 million in upgrades and new HVAC systems if completed within the next biennium. Various types of construction materials, systems used in older facilities compound the challenge of preserving the useful life of these assets. DOC is requesting $70.6 million to address items in 11 categories. That's roofs, HVAC, plumbing, hazardous material abatement, infrastructure, communication and security, hardscaping, building elements, electrical, architecture and engineering, and fire marshal repairs. In addition, DOC requests $12.3 million in capital construction funds to continue to upgrade the department's wireless communication system. The failure of the wireless communication system would result in substantial impacts to our ability to maintain life, health, and safety of the DOCs and our AICs in our care, our staff, and the public. The next few slides are a representation of just some of the challenges of operating in an institution that's nearing 100 years old, with ever-growing population needs, and will highlight the need to replace OSP and construct a centralized healthcare facility here in the Valley. As the graph on this slide represents, over the past decade, the 55-plus population has grown by 15% and is expected to continue on that path. In addition to the challenges our aging population presents, as Deputy Heidi Stewart mentioned in an earlier presentation, the majority of our AICs have some sort of mental health treatment need, and we do not have the appropriate programming space at OSP to properly accommodate that need.
Co-Chair.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'd be interested to see, I know we have recidivism rates broken down overall, but the recidivism rate by age category. So for example, what's the recidivism rate of people who are released over the age of 55 or, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s? If you have that data, I would love to be able to see it.
Co-Chairs Broadman, Evans, Representative Choatson, we'll have to get that information for you and get it to you later today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Additionally, OSP is well beyond its useful life and doesn't support the level of care needed to support our incarcerated individuals. Estimated investments to come into ADA compliance, improve functionality, and maintenance of the aging buildings at OSP exceeds $200 million and will continue to grow exponentially. OSP's current deferred maintenance and seismic retrofitting needs alone are nearing $111 million. And to bring the HVAC needs to current standards is estimated to be just over $25 million. The E-Block at OSP currently houses AICs that use walkers and wheelchairs on one side, and the opposite side is the day treatment unit. The geriatric unit has multiple challenges, which include inadequate openings for wheelchair and walker access, constant noise due to outdated equipment, inadequate HVAC creating heating and cooling issues. And for instance, as Director Reese mentioned in an earlier presentation, Tier 4s and 5 have registered over 110 degrees in the summer. In the winter, the floors are actually freezing. Outdated walls of single pane windows and no functional day room or seating on the unit. The day treatment unit on the other side of the E-Block, I'll cover on the next slide. 40 high maintenance AICs reside on the bottom tier of cells. The 4 tiers above them house general population AICs. Some of the issues on the DTU include no privacy for treatment. This allows the general population to hear staff and AIC discussions, which could create additional PREA and extortion situations. This area also lacks a fire suppression system, and there's a lack of proper ventilation there. So many of our critical resources, such as counselors, ADA coordinators, the chapel, the law library, and the barber shop, and more services, are located on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors of the main institution. AICs and staff with disabilities have a very hard time or just simply cannot access these resources, as there is no elevator to service these floors. As you can see from the photos, there are a number of areas where water infiltration has damaged the structure and ceiling, along with the needed ADA upgrades. But more importantly, the lack of access to these areas impede the ability of many to utilize these services. In addition, there are other concerns like staff responding to critical incidents must navigate the stairs to provide aid and support, difficulty accessing legal phones, and the temperature in the summer here can reach, has been measured at 106 degrees. The pictures in this slide are of the offices for our behavioral health services staff and their clients. Just a few of the concerns here: peeling lead paint, and that doesn't sound like a big issue, but it's mitigation of lead and asbestos as we dig into those projects. Single pane, inefficient, broken windows. One wall-mounted air conditioner that you can see in the picture actually services 6 offices there. And there's evidence of prior water intrusion with cracks and decaying ceiling panels, most likely containing asbestos and lead. And our OSP infirmary. The infirmary at the Oregon State Penitentiary is severely outdated, undersized for the demand, and needs significant repair and updating. The facility's infrastructure suffers from numerous issues, including leaky roofs, inadequate heating and cooling systems that hamper the provision of effective health care. The cramped and deteriorating space is insufficient to meet the needs of the growing geriatric AIC population, resulting in overcrowded conditions that further strain the already limited resources. These conditions not only compromise the quality of care, but also pose serious health risks to both AICs and medical staff, highlighting an urgent need for the requested healthcare facility. It's also worth noting that the infirmary is located on the 3rd floor with a single elevator as the primary source of egress. When this elevator goes offline, which happens often, it's aged, stairs are the only other option and can be difficult to navigate for people with disabilities or injuries. For adults in custody on hospice or extended stays in the infirmary that would like to go outside or simply enjoy some fresh air, the space we have allotted for them is a piece of rooftop that we've flattened out. and provide that space for them. It's not very inviting or comfortable, but it is a clean space. Creating a centralized healthcare facility is one step in providing effective and efficient specialist care to AICs. Developing a campus that allows us to serve acute populations serving medical, mental health, and geriatric AICs, as well as housing a central pharmacy and the transport unit, would be the most effective use of resources. Just as important as the healthcare facility, the replacement of OSP should be prioritized due to the rapid growth of deferred maintenance in the current institution, significant maintenance and upkeep costs, and the lack of appropriate programming space and high investment for improvement.
Chair Broadman and Co-Chair Evans, I just want to add that the photos you're looking at are real. They were taken recently. They don't represent the good work our staff do in maintaining the facility. So the peeling paint, the broken windows, those are being repaired, and then we're moving on to the next issue, the next problem. It's a constant updating of that facility by staff.
Some of the issues with some of those areas really are that the physical plant teams spend so much time on the issues that arise daily on repairs and life safety issues, that some of the minor issues such as painting and things like that really fall down the list a little bit. Okay, healthcare facility. Older individuals in prison are more likely to experience dementia, impaired mobility, and loss of hearing and vision than the same age seniors outside the prison walls. In prison, these ailments present special challenges and can necessitate structural accessibility adaptations such as accessible housing and wheelchair ramps. They typically experience the effects of age sooner than people outside prison because of issues such as substance use disorder, inadequate preventative and primary care before incarceration, and the stress linked to isolation and sometimes violent environment of prison. The 25-27 GRB allots for $4.5 million in general funds to conduct a feasibility study and conceptual design of a new centralized healthcare facility for mental health and geriatric AIC care, along with the feasibility study and conceptual design work for the replacement of OSP. Final design work and engineering work and construction of these projects will be requested in future biennia. We believe we have.
Sorry, one second.
Sorry, yes.
Co-Chair.
Just a little marker down that, at least in conversations we've had, the replacement of OSP and the construction of a healthcare facility for intergenerational aged assistance aren't necessarily at the same place.
That's
Because
correct.
some of the care that people need is probably closer to Portland rather than Salem in terms of health availability. So a flexible plan is probably better than a specific one down to the nuts and bolts, because I don't know that there's going to be enough money anywhere to do all at one time. So
Co-chairs and Rep. Evans, thank you for that. Taken into account. We believe we have ample DOC-owned space or property here in Salem for these projects, and an additional property in Junction City already cited for a prison. Admin services also includes our Information Technology Services Unit. IT services budget is $43.7 million and includes just under 100 staff that comprise the following teams. Information systems, the service desk, which handles an average of 3,700 help desk tickets a month, the support services, application services, the project management office, risk assurance, and finally there's a team dedicated to AIC computing support. Our ITS teams have a key role in the implementation of the electronic health records software, which will replace the existing paper system, along with the implementation of GovQA, the telephone modernization, ISDS, which is our scheduling tool that currently operates on Windows 7, and the facilities computerized maintenance management system. In the 25-27 biennium, there's also a significant need to update our offender management system, And this team will be instrumental in the development of that project. Okay. The current offender management system utilized by DOC called CIS, or Corrections Information System, is a custom-built offender management system that was developed in 1989. The current offender management system operates on an IBM I-Series, or AS400 platform, utilizing COBOL programming language, an aging technology and programming language that is no longer taught and is well beyond its obsolescence date. The box you see in front of you is a compact Portable 3 computer that was actually used as part of the development of the system we currently use today. This box weighs about 22 pounds and was the laptop of the day creating that program. Imagine if technology did not advance to today's standards and we were still lugging this around. This is what our staff are metaphorically lugging around today, operating in a system that is literally 3.5 decades old.
Co-chair.
Thank you. But on the other hand, it's not easy to hack.
That's true.
So technically, maybe
It's
this
getting
isn't
there.
as obsolete as you think, in that they should be thankful that they're not chasing down problems with the hacking.
We have been very lucky that we have not been hacked. With a system this aged, it is likely that something could happen.
Okay.
Security is getting much more difficult today. I'll cover a little bit of that coming up. Some of the challenges with the current system are difficulties integrating with modern systems we bring online to help manage the business. The lack of data analytics reduces our ability to make data-driven decisions timely. And with the current environment is becoming very difficult to maintain cybersecurity in a system that is decades past its prime. Since the language is no longer taught, it's very difficult to hire programmers that can work in this system, and we are beginning the development and research process for a new system that will effectively manage our operations and produce data to improve outcomes.
So on that point,
Brother.
what's a realistic time frame for full replacement of the system?
If we got funding, we're looking 6 to 8 years. We are in the initial phase of that.
You're going to use
of
this for 8
process.
more years?
At a minimum, and we don't have funding to move forward with this project. We're doing the basic initial studies on it today.
Okay.
Do the
If you had funding, it would still, how long would it take?
We could, if we had full funding, we could move 6 to 8 years, and it may be sooner. Some of the companies that we've talked to, Senator Broadman, they have rolled it out in other states in as few as 3 years.
Okay.
That, I think, would be very risky with a system that covers something this broad.
And then, I think we covered this, but just to remind me, does the CIS communicate with your electronic health records, or are they completely separate?
Co-chairs, Senator Broadman, it does connect with our electronic health records.
And what level of sort of need for replacement is your EHR system?
Excuse me, what level of
What
need?
level, I mean, is the electronic health record system as antiquated as the CIS system?
Senator Broadman,
Senator Broadman does not.
we do not have an electronic health record system currently. We're onboarding it. That's the
Right.
system. Right now, we're in paper charts.
We're literally replacing paper charts today with a new electronic health record system.
And so your new system will communicate with this CIS system?
It does.
I mean, I'm not a technical IT person, but how is that possible with this level of antiquation?
It has been a very difficult thing to do, and that's part of what has taken so long to make this EHR successful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Oh. Okay. The picture in this slide is an example of a modern offender management system that would replace our antiquated system. With simple clicks of the mouse, all offender information is available. Reports can be generated very quickly. The screens can be customized to user preferences, and the systems will be user-friendly and familiar to most staff, as will be based off platforms we use in our daily lives. As part of our IT strategic plan, amongst other things like developing a robust project management team and strategy, and connecting with our customers to better define their needs, we focused on modernizing our systems to better serve the ever-growing needs of the department and the state. And finally, our Office of Data Research and Decision Support is part of the Administrative Services. RDDS is small but mighty, with a $3.6 million budget and 7 staff who have 3 primary roles. That's database management, data analytics reporting and research, and data science. RDDS drives data-informed decision-making by ensuring research aligns with the agency's mission. The agency is committed to a strategic vision that provides data-driven decision-making. We operate in a data-intensive environment where vast amounts of information are processed daily, and outdated systems fragmented processes pose significant challenges that impact efficiency, accuracy, and the ability to make informed decisions. To effectively address these challenges, we are prioritizing modernization efforts that enhance the reliability, operational efficiency, and strategic decision-making. By investing in advanced technology, standardized processes, and robust data governance, the agency will be well-positioned to manage data more efficiently, foster interdepartmental collaboration, and drive innovation. And with that, I'd like to conclude our presentation for the Administrative Services. And I thank you all for your valuable time, Co-Chairs Broadman and Evans, and members of the committee. I'll welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'm just curious to know, given how antiquated the system is, are we having to pay like extra for the folks that know how to navigate the old
Co-Chairs,
technology?
Senator Campos, we don't have to pay extra for these people, but it is getting very difficult to hire programmers and people to work within this system. We have people working for us that have already literally twice been retired. The technology is just not taught in today's schools, so it's not a technology used broadly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we'll have more questions on IT as the days continue. This is fascinating.
Thank you.
Next up, it looks like we have Jeremiah and Community Corrections.
Well, good morning, Co-Chair Broadman, Co-Chair Evans, members of the committee. For the record, Jeremiah Stromberg. I'm the Assistant Director of the Community Corrections Division with the Department of Corrections. And this morning, I'm going to walk you through the funding, the structure, the outcome measures, and the programs that are related to the Community Corrections Division within the department. The total Community Corrections budget is approximately $370 million. The vast majority of this money is pass-through dollars to the counties to provide for the supervision, sanction services for all probation, parole, and post-prison supervision within the community. The 75 FTE represent those in Lynn and Douglas County that are under the direction of the Department of Corrections, as well as our central administrative team that is responsible for the oversight and implementation of the Community Corrections grants. We'll talk a little bit more about the individual funding streams that make up this $370 million as we move forward in the presentation. But I do want to jump right into how this budget is built. It is a complicated budget for community corrections, but it's one that we have had in place for more than 2 decades now. And what we do is we determine what is the daily cost to supervise an individual. That's the capitated rate. As you can imagine, high-risk individuals cost more. We're putting more time, energy, and resources, sometimes jail beds, programming to those individuals, and our lower-risk individuals cost less. And we come up with a capitated rate to determine what does it cost per person. We then apply that against the forecast. And as you know, on April 1st, we will have a new forecast come out for this population. And that will be the forecast that the capitated rate is applied to determine what is the baseline funding for parole and probation services this biennium. It's important as we develop this to know that that baseline funding is what also drives the opt-out. And I know some of you are familiar with that, but any budget below the baseline funding would allow counties to return parole and probation services to the Department of Corrections. And then we would oversee those counties the way we do with Lynn and Douglas. So to develop that capitated rate, as I mentioned, we look at the makeup of our high, medium, and low-risk populations. We take snapshots throughout the year to determine how many individuals fall within those categories, and then we have a separate cost for each and every one of them. For this next biennium, that capitated rate is coming out at $15.09. So that's the amount that we are starting with to determine what the community corrections budget will be as we move forward. And this rate changes every biennium. As the makeup of high, medium, and low-risk individuals changes, we want to create a budget that's responsive to the actual population that we're currently supervising. We then take that $15 a day and apply it, as I said, to the forecast. This graph represents the October forecast. But as you look back over the last 6 years, you can see that we lost about a third of the population on supervision. The pandemic had the biggest impact as we saw a complete slowdown and stoppage of prosecution. And then the passage of ballot measure 110 had an impact on our overall population as well. With the passage of House Bill 4002, it has been anticipated that we're going to see a substantial growth in the supervised population over the next few years. Our office, along with the Criminal Justice Commission, has been working with the Office of Economic Analysis. And while they are not releasing the forecast till April, it is appearing that it might not track quite as quickly and quite as high as we're seeing in this graph. A lot of that has to do with still trying to determine the impact of 4002. How many people are we actually going to see come forward onto formal supervision? Obviously, the issues and impacts of defense services right now, and in some locations, prosecutorial staffing is having an impact on cases moving forward. And on top of it, we're currently operating with about 1,500 less individuals on supervision than what the forecast had projected. So given all of that, we're certainly anticipating that this may flatline a little bit than what you're seeing here today, and that will help determine what that final budget will be. So when we compare that to the current biennium, currently this grant and aid budget is sitting at $268 million for 23-25. And for those of you who were on the committee 2 years ago, this body approved an additional $5.7 million above the baseline to help bridge that complete drop-off in cases so that counties didn't have to completely eliminate staff and contracts and programs that they had in place. And again, during the short session, there was an additional $16 million infused into grant and aid to further ensure that counties could maintain their current services. The idea was that as we see that population increase, those one-time infusions would not be necessary going forward. So based on that October forecast right now, we would be looking at a $312 million budget for community corrections for the next biennium. Again, assuming that will adjust when the April forecast comes out. And grant and aid makes up the biggest portion of our budget, but there are a variety of funding streams that we utilize and provide to the counties that the department passes through. And I just want to highlight a couple of these as we go forward. First would be the Measure 57 dollars. These dollars were provided to the department beginning in the early mid-2000s to specifically focus on repeat drug and property offenders. This is the highest recidivating population. These are the individuals spinning in and out of our local jails. And so these additional dollars provide for inpatient treatment, intensive supervision, programming, supports our sheriff's offices and their detention facilities as well, and can be used in juvenile facilities to support early prevention and interdiction around addiction behavior. We also have $1.2 million in transitional funds. During the first 6 months of transition from DOC, that's the most critical and difficult time for a person to acclimate back to the community. We use these dollars to provide for housing, treatment, transportation, basic hygiene needs, anything either DOC or the counties recognize this individual may need some additional supports and services around. And so having that fund available is critically important to successful transition. And then lastly, I'll highlight the Senate Bill 395 jail reimbursements. These are the monies that pass through the department to the sheriffs for the actual cost of housing those serving 90-day sentences for DUII. Over the last 2 biennium, we have run out of money to reimburse the sheriffs. In fact, right now, we are collecting their invoices for this biennium, and we are not reimbursing them as we have run dry for the amount of reimbursement necessary. The governor's budget at $8 million would sufficiently cover what we are projecting for the next biennium and would not result in us being in the current situation we are of not being able to reimburse on those dollars.
Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So did this happen last biennium as well, where you had a shortage and were unable to reimburse the counties?
Chair Broadman, Representative Lewis, yes, it did. And during the short session, there were monies infused to allow us to pay those past invoices. So we did make the sheriffs whole by the end of the biennium, but it took legislative action to do so.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a unique year, as I mentioned, in regards to how the budget is built. Statute requires that every 6 years, the department shall conduct an actual cost study to determine the costs incurred by each county to provide supervision, management, supportive services, and sanctions. And this is the opportunity for the legislature to reset the community corrections budget. So as I mentioned, if you do nothing different, we would be looking at $15.09 per day. But we conduct a time study to look at how much time are we spending on each and every type of case, how much pre-case management, investigations, court time, travel time. You can imagine being a parole officer in Lake County. It may take you 2.5 hours between home visits, and we calculate that time and cost to conduct the work across each county. We then gather all of the financials of the counties. How much are they actually spending, and what are the costs incurred to supervise the population? And so what I'm presenting to you on the next few slides is our reset of the community corrections budget to what the actual cost would be. Before I show you the outcome for this one, in 2006, it was the first cost study required by the department, and the legislature fully funded that cost study. So our budget today is built upon the 2006 cost study that was done. We did one in 2012. It was during the time of justice reinvestment, and only a portion of the funds were infused into the community corrections budget. In 2018, we did another one, and the legislature did not adopt any portion of it. So as you can see, we've been trending in the wrong direction around our cost studies, from fully funded to partial to not at all. Although during that session, we came to agreements around some exception inflation rates so that we could infuse some additional money into community corrections. But after completing today's study over this last year, I first want to share that when it comes to the time study, in 2006, much like the technology you saw from Assistant Director Martin, things have changed dramatically. We're spending a lot more time on our high-risk population. We do a lot of work with brand new individuals on supervision, many more hours spent upfront, intensive, and responsive than we were in 2006. And yet our budget is built on that 2006 timeframe and study. This was a 2017 study. We have not done a more recent one, as it is still reflective of the work and time that we are spending in the community, as our practices haven't changed substantially since then. But in each and every category, you can see that there was a significant shift and increase in the amount of work and time being done by the 36 counties. So what that results then in is on the left, as I've already presented to you, is if we continue with the 06 time study and the adoption of some of the financial work in 2012, we're at $15.09. If we adopt our most recent time study and last year's financials for the counties, we would be at $18.18 per day. So for $3 a day per person, we can right size to the actual cost of what supervision is costing us.
Representative Choatson.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Fully understand the point that you're making and really appreciate it. It's also striking to me, on Monday I asked about the cost per day of somebody incarcerated in DOC, and appreciate the really speedy response. And the average cost, not the marginal one, was I think $184 a day. So just looking at this and seeing that to supervise, if we were to fully fund it, to supervise a high-risk person, it's still about 6 times more expensive to incarcerate them. To supervise a low-risk person, it's about 33 times more expensive to incarcerate them. It's just striking. I don't know what we do with that information today, but I think that I was just really interested in seeing that comparison in terms of average cost.
Chair Broadman, Representative Choatson, that's exactly correct. We usually run about that same percentage difference in cost biennium over biennium.
Got it. Thank you.
So before we move off of that, the options available obviously for this body is there can be full adoption of the cost study, a partial adoption, or none at all. Again, the not adopting the cost study doesn't trigger the opt-out clause, only that baseline funding does at this point. So there is certainly flexibility in designing how best to move forward. As you saw in the governor's budget, her recommendation was to infuse $20 million above the baseline funding, which would have been about a third of the cost study that she incorporated into her budget. So obviously we're extremely grateful that the governor recognized a need to infuse additional monies into community corrections, but it certainly gives you a feel of what the options are as it relates to the study.
So fully loaded at the 2024 capitated, the $18.18 was 68 or $70 million.
Chair Broadman, it was 68 million based on that October forecast. If the April forecast comes down, the 68 million comes down.
Okay.
The $18 doesn't change, but the population we apply it to does, and so you would see a reduction there.
Okay. So somewhere between the governor's proposal of $20 million and whatever the forecast generates out of the $18.18 capitated rate.
Chair Broadman, I think that's accurate, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Lewis.
Co-Chair, so this question may relate to what Representative Choatson just asked, but I'm curious, there are 2 counties that have opted out of doing community corrections, and I think DOC takes care of the community corrections for those 2 counties. So what is the cost, the daily cost right now for DOC to do those 2 counties as related to what community corrections does it for?
Chair Broadman, Representative Lewis, Lynn and Douglas are the 2 counties we supervise. They are included in this same cost. We do not create a separate budget or a different financial response for those 2 counties. The difference is we don't receive any county general funds. About a third of the counties also infuse county general fund into community corrections if they want to, say, run a day reporting center that just isn't funded under the state dollars, or a work release center. And so Lynn and Douglas operate solely on their slice of the budget. And right now, those 2 counties each get about 3.5% of the overall budget based on their population. So we equate them and treat them equal to the other 34 counties.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Representative Choatson.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'm trying to figure out the right way to frame this question, but as you've been in this role for a fair amount of time, obviously the amount of time that somebody serves in prison is a variety of factors, but largely a policy decision that our legislative body makes. As we've made different policy choices around either increasing or decreasing sentences, have you found it more difficult to supervise people in a way that makes sure that we keep the community safe once they are released? In other words, when we've shortened sentences, when we've lengthened sentences, are people getting out, and is it more or less difficult to keep the community safe doing your work, or has that not really correlated one with the other?
Chair Broadman, Representative Choatson, I think we are absolutely seeing, as you've heard from the presentations over the last few days, a higher level of acuity, a higher level of need, higher level of addiction. Those things are challenges regardless of the length of time an individual serves. The more programming we have available in our institutions to prepare and equip individuals upon release, and as the director talks about, that warm handoff to the counties is extremely important in our success. Having those transition dollars to really treat individual needs, regardless of cost, has been extremely important. And overall, for supervision, whether they serve 1 year or 10, we have designed a model that is focused on their risk, their needs, and then appropriate referral and follow-up and accountability while they are on supervision. And so in a few slides, I'm going to show you what those outcomes are. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to see that even with a lot of the changes in the higher acuity, we're continuing to get better results.
Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about what are you purchasing then with more than a $300 million budget for community corrections. We supervise more than 21,000 individuals in the community, typically under 4 different categories of probation, parole, local control, and those that are on transitional leave from prison. And this is a state-county collaboration. The counties, in order to receive their slice of the pie, if you will, have to present the department with a biennial plan. How are they going to spend every dime of this money? And until the department approves that plan, we don't release the funds to the county. And then when we do, it's quarterly payments where we continue to work with the counties and monitor how the monies are being spent and their outcomes. We're required by statute to review county quality and compliance every biennium. And so there is accountability built into this model to ensure that the dollars are being spent specifically for the population they were designed for. Given the amount of time I've been in this role, I will share with you I'm extremely proud of the relationship we have. Not all state-county partnerships function in the best way, and we have been highly effective in this model. Last biennium, the state of Minnesota completely adopted Oregon's community corrections funding structure and model as they reviewed all 50 states and determined that we had the best model that would equate to their needs. And so we see other states adopting similar work that we've done. And so this has been a strong partnership. The QR code will take you to our biennial report where you will just see a myriad of programs and services in each county that are being provided and how these monies are being spent. So moving forward with that, I just want to share one particular area, and that's around housing. Each biennium, more and more money is being put forward to provide housing for our population out of the community corrections budget. This is obviously extremely critical as we can't expect success with individuals if they don't have a stable and safe place to live at night. And so what you see on this slide in the upper left, Wasco County recently purchased a home to provide for transitional housing within their community. Klamath purchased an empty motel and has turned it into short-term transitional housing for those coming out of prison or in their community on supervision. And then obviously Oregon has the premier treatment and housing in Sponsors in Lane County, which provides full wraparound services from behavioral health, healthcare, supervision, and long-term housing for those that find themselves in the system. But this is one of those just substantial increasing costs that have been put on the backs of community corrections to provide. A budget that is not fully funded, these are the services that disappear first. At the end of the day, our officers must assess, evaluate, see and supervise and refer individuals to services that may or may not exist in the community. These have been some of the critical, I'm gonna call them critical luxuries within our budget to be able to provide our own housing and support. We already talked a little bit about Lynn and Douglas County under the department. We do have 1,700 individuals on supervision between those two counties that we're responsible for. And the way the opt-out works is at any point, Lynn and Douglas Board of Commissioners could vote to retake community corrections, and the department would prepare a smooth transition for those counties. But since 2004, they have been pleased with the services provided by our agency and have continued to allow us to continue to supervise within their counties. I want to talk about just a few of the other programs that we oversee. For the last 10 years, the short-term transitional leave program has been a critical component to reduce prison beds and jail utilization. Over the last 10 years, we've released more than 14,000 AICs early, most of them 120 days early. They earn this depending on their sentence within DOC and then their behavior. And do they have a transition plan? They must have a place to live and have been working towards their goal to release. During that time that they otherwise would have been incarcerated, 89% of that 14,000 have been successful. And what I mean by success is they weren't committing technical violations to the point where we return them to DOC, and they didn't commit a new crime. So we have seen a high utilization of success. On any given day, there's more than 400 individuals who would otherwise be taking up a prison bed. And so Representative Choatson, as you think about those costs, we are funding those individuals right now at $13 a day versus the full DOC bed rate. And so a substantial savings that has not impacted public safety.
Sorry, Jeremiah, why is it 13 and not the regular capitated rate?
Chair Broadman, the current biennium is $13.
Okay, got it.
The 25 will be 15. So I apologize for the confusion on those dollars.
It's me, thanks.
Another one of the programs we're responsible to oversee is the Earned Discharge Program. And during the last 10 years as well, more than 13,000 individuals have gotten off supervision early. They met the requirements. They no longer needed a parole officer. They met all conditions of supervision, and we were able to release them early. The Criminal Justice Commission has conducted 2 studies on this population and shows that they continue to have lower recidivism rates than those that continued through and did the entire period of supervision. So this has been another area where we are able to, when individuals have maximized the benefits of supervision, that we don't keep them on any longer than is necessary to supervise them.
And what is the earliest point that you can earn discharge, one could earn discharge after their release?
Chair Broadman, it's at 50% of their supervision period, a minimum of 6 months.
Okay. So if you have a year of probation and 6 months, if you have 2 years of, it would be a year.
Chair Broadman, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And the funding, we're still calculating funding on the total amount that they would be under supervision.
Chair Broadman, Oregon's earned discharge is unique in that it was developed to incentivize counties that moving people off supervision wouldn't result in a reduction of your budget. So we continue to calculate these individuals as if they're still on supervision, and then that way the county is not harmed financially for doing that good work. We also don't require that you have to go back to court or before the parole board. Community Corrections has the sole authority to determine when an individual has met the conditions.
Okay, great.
So there is not a financial savings with this, but there's certainly an incentive for counties to be to move people forward.
But important to take that into account when we think of the resources that are actually being spent on a particular person who's released, if they're actually getting some percentage of them are getting out 6 months early.
Chair Broadman, that is true. And when this was designed, it was earned discharge was for a small portion of the probation population. Mm-hmm. Over the last couple biennium, that has been expanded to those releasing from prison and was even made retroactive, I believe, in the 2023 session. So we are seeing, that is why you are seeing very large numbers of individuals moving forward. I think as of right now, we have approximately 2,000 individuals who have been discharged but would otherwise be on supervision today if this program did not exist.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep. And I also want to highlight the Family Sentencing Alternative Program. Those of you who sit on House Judiciary are certainly aware that House Bill 2555 would see that this program continues forward. It's not currently in the governor's budget to continue forward, but it's important to recognize the work that Community Corrections did in 5 counties to allow single parents to be diverted from prison with intensive supervision and DHS support to keep their child in the home and to remain out of custody. We have seen more than 340 participants. It's impacted more than 600 children who otherwise would have potentially spent a longer duration in foster care or in other placements. And again, the CJC has studied this program and shown that it has a substantially lower recidivism rate than single parents who went to prison and came out and attempted reunification with their children. And so again, while it's not part of our current budget, I wanted to highlight it as it's an example of the good work the counties are doing in order to prevent individuals from going to prison and the impact on children in our communities as well.
Representative Choatson.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Do we have a dollars per day on, is this the same as the other rate for supervision, or is this a specific amount of money per day for the people that we're supervising?
Chair Broadman, Representative Choatson, it is a little more expensive. Instead of the $15 a day, it's closer to about $26, $27 a day. It is a separate funding stream to the 5 counties. That guarantees that we can have lower caseloads and that those officers can be available after hours and do more intensive work with these families to ensure that individuals who otherwise would be in prison are abiding by the conditions of supervision.
Representative Helfrich. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to do a follow-up first, Rep. Choatson?
And so, but just to restate that, that's still, we're spending like a sixth of the money, roughly speaking, that we would be spending to incarcerate them. We're getting better public safety outcomes for that fraction of the money.
Chair Broadman, Representative Choatson, that is correct.
Okay.
Representative Helfrich.
Thank you, Co-Chair Broadman. So Representative Choatson kind of talked what I wanted to talk about a little bit, but so the program is for, single parents and guardians. It's my understanding there was some talk about trying to expand that to caregivers, and what does that actually mean? And you may not have that information, but to me, if it's working for the single parents and guardians, keep it there, and it's only used in a few counties right now, and instead of expanding this program to caregivers, wherever that looks like, and have to do all the background investigation, they're actually being part of that. What would it look like to expand it to the rest of the counties that don't have access to this? And you don't have to answer the question right now, but if you get back to me, I'd appreciate that, what that would look like, because there's a cost analysis, and this isn't in the budget, and we want to take the sunset out of it, and so just what those would look like. Yeah. Thank you.
Chair Broadman, Representative Helfrich, I can answer that for you at this point in time. There is discussion around what the definition of a caregiver could be or should be for purposes of expansion. Given that there's already a statutory definition when it comes to dependency hearings, it's the position of the department that that caregiver language should align with other dependency hearings and determinations of if an individual is truly caring for the basic needs of a child. We are working with the district attorneys and the proponents of the bill to come to some agreement around that language. As far as expansion goes, I would certainly love to see it expanded. I know there's at least 3 other counties that have expressed interest. The base budget for the program right now for 5 counties is $2.2 million. Maybe going up to 2.9 for this next biennium. Each additional county is about $500,000 to add the program for 2 years.
All right. Follow up. Yep. More of a comment. I think it's really important if we're going to, before we expand to this caregivers, whatever that definition looks like, the parents and actual guardians, let's get it to the rest of the counties so they can use it to see it, how it rolls out and actually works that way. To me, it's more important. The caregiver thing, I think there's room for manipulation in that, and may not be to the best interest of the youth.
Thank you. Yes, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So it's a 2-part question. Under the existing program, are there any restrictions on the level of crime that was committed by that individual? I mean, Class A felony, Class B, Class C. And the second part is, are the victims engaged in this process? Are they in any way involved in the decision that would allow somebody to participate in the program?
Chair Broadman, the current bill would remove any limitation of your criminal history. Currently, the program, if you have person offenses in your criminal history, you're not eligible. We're eliminating that criminal history, and what we have agreed to is that if the district attorney, the defense, and the court has agreed this individual qualifies for a downward departure from prison, then we should look to see, do they meet all the other qualifications for this program? This is the most intensive supervision they can receive. And so the decision is solely at the sentencing level. If you're not going to prison and you are a single parent in one of the 5 counties, let's see if this program isn't the ideal place for you. So we're not making any other determinations around crime type. If you're eligible to be departed, you may be eligible for this program. And so as far as victim engagement, most of that is probably happening at that sentencing phase around an individual who may or who could go to prison versus is being departed to probation. Community Corrections works very closely with victims who choose and want to continue to be engaged. And certainly when we're talking about a single parent and a child, many times there is a family component at play and where a family member may be the victim. And so we certainly work with victims through that supervision process.
Okay, thank you.
Co-Chair. Thank you, Co-Chair. So what I heard was, if you're eligible for the program, it kind of moves in a particular way. Is everybody eligible for the program in terms of every crime, if you're in for particular types of violent crimes, you're eligible top to bottom?
Chair Broadman, Chair Evans, you are eligible if you were departed from prison. So we're not making the crime determination. So certainly there are crimes that just are not going to be departed from prison.
Okay.
We are talking about when a plea agreement has been made that in lieu of prison, we're going to put you on probation. That's decision number 1. Decision number 2 then is, well, our county has this intensive program. Let's see if they qualify. Are they the parent or guardian? Is there a reunification attempt with DHS occurring with the child? If you're a parent, but you're not at all working towards reunification with your child, you're not entering this program. This is really designed that if the court has determined you're going to stay home, and we determine you have a child in that home that you are the sole caregiver to, let's give you these intensive wraparound services between probation and DHS services.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just want to highlight a few of the other things the department is responsible for. We oversee the Interstate Compact for those on supervision both in and out of the state of Oregon. We are currently supervising 1,300 individuals on behalf of other states, and we have 1,200 Oregonians being supervised in other states. Obviously, we want people to live and move where they have the greatest chance for success, where they may have family, job opportunities. And so the Department of Corrections is the gatekeeper, that no one is going to enter Oregon or leave Oregon if you are on supervision without going through the approval process. And I have a team of 4 staff who oversee this and work with the counties to ensure that we're doing adequate supervision, both in-state and out-of-state. A few of the other areas we're responsible for, the department oversees jail inspections. We review all juvenile facilities, any lockups, temp holds, any place you can be kept and questioned and handcuffed for any period of time. We ensure that those places meet the statutory requirements. So we are constantly reviewing all of the facilities around the state. We work with the Sheriff's Association around all of the sheriff's jails to ensure that they're meeting statutory compliance as well. And then, as I mentioned, my team is responsible to ensure that counties are receiving all of the support, training, and services they need to adequately supervise individuals. With 36 counties all wanting to do it slightly differently, we need to ensure that this profession has some consistency to it and some growth to it. And so I have a team of 9 staff, highly dedicated to working with all 36 counties to ensure not just compliance, but progress and progression forward. My final few slides are some of our outcome measures. So again, when you invest more than $300 million into all of these programs and services, what is it that you should expect to see as far as outcomes go? Conditions of supervision have been the crux of supervision for over 100 years. Oregon's earliest conditions were things that said, like, do not engage in indecent amusement and do not enter saloons. And while our terminology has changed, really the concept hasn't. It is about positive reinforcement, finding meaningful work, meaningful treatment, and addressing addiction. Over the last 6 years, our employment rates have continued to trickle upwards for those that are on supervision. We're up to 58% of those on supervision are gainfully employed. We also see that our treatment engagement hovers right around 30%. A third of our population at any given time on any given day is involved in treatment or programming, and that's a good percent. We may have about a third that don't necessarily need treatment or programming or may not be ready, and another third that's completed it. So this is certainly a positive outcome as far as treatment engagement and requirements. We also monitor how successful are individuals. Do they complete supervision without being revoked and sent back to prison or commit a new crime while on supervision? And you can see here, those that release from prison, more than 70% are successful during their term of supervision and are not sent back to the Department of Corrections. For probation, it's around 62%. And those numbers have ebbed and flowed over time, but this is certainly an outcome area that we are constantly focused on in looking for ways for individuals to be more successful during their supervision period. And then 2 slides around recidivism, which has obviously been a conversation over the last few days, and Director Reese spoke a little bit about that 11% reincarceration rate. But as you can see, over the last 6 years, we have seen a significant reduction in both arrest for any new crime, for new misdemeanor and felony convictions, and then again, the reincarceration rate. What this shows us is that we are seeing improved results, that we have a third of our population that we work with does re-enter the system, but that means 2/3 are not being convicted of a new offense, which is it's hard to compare nationally. Every state sort of measures recidivism differently. But most national studies show a new conviction and reincarceration rates from 38% to 70% for their states. And so Oregon is certainly a leader. I won't say the lowest, but certainly a leader in overall the outcomes that we're seeing for those that have spent time in DOC and on probation in the community. And to break that down just a little bit further, and this is not an apples to apples comparison, but the yellow line shows those that serve a sentence in a local county jail, their reconviction rate is hovering right around 50%. That's that repeat drug and property population, those that are still spiraling with addiction, and obviously our local jails don't have a lot of services available while in custody. But we're really proud to look at our DOC reconviction rate, and you can see that that continues to drop. That 3 out of every 4 individuals who leave DOC do not return with a new conviction within 3 years. I think as you've heard over the last few days, the amazing work of our security staff, of our support staff, our volunteers, our religious services, our work programs, the medical care we're providing, the safe prisons, the transition and reentry efforts, and the work of community corrections is what results in that number that you see there today, that only 1 is returning back to us in 3 years. And so we're seeing just some exceptional outcomes because of the structure of this department, because of the budget that you all have supported historically. And with that, I'm happy to conclude my presentation and answer any other questions.
Thank you, Co-Chair.
So understanding and appreciating the work that's being done, 75% still a C. I guess I'm curious what the reincarceration rate or recidivism rate is at 10 years. 3 years, I can get. Is it steady, or does it uptick over a 10-year span? I'd like to know that number.
Chair Broadman, Chair Evans, the Criminal Justice Commission has done longer duration studies. We can certainly check with them to pull the most recent. I know they've done some 5-year, and I believe they've done some 10-year in the past, so we can get you that information.
Thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues? Representative Choatson.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Since I asked earlier about recidivism rate based on different age groups, I guess as long as I'm requesting data, the other question I would have would be recidivism rate based on length of sentence. If there's any way to break that out, or if you all have access to that data for folks who are serving less than a year, or 1 to 5 years, whatever categories make sense, but to see if there's any trend or pattern there.
Chair Broadman, Representative Choatson, yes, your earlier question around age and now duration, we'll check with the Criminal Justice Commission. They would be the keepers of that data, so we'll work to compile something and get it back to you.
Thank you so much.
You bet. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the director.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Chair Broadman, Chair Evans, members of the committee, thank you for spending the last 3 days with us. I'm really proud of the work we do at DOC. We're one of the public safety agencies that protects and serves all Oregonians. And I'm excited for our new mission that focuses on promoting accountability and protecting Oregonians and transforming lives. And that work is meaningful, it has purpose for us and our staff, and it is actually doing good in our community. So I'm grateful for your time and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Reese? Well, Director, thank you for the last 3 days. Thank you for the quick answers we've gotten periodically the next day. So great presentation, great week. And with that, I will close the informational meeting on House Bill 5004. Subcommittee members, any comments or questions? Steve, can you give us a preview of tomorrow?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Tomorrow we'll have public testimony on House Bill 5004, and it looks like we'll have a full House.
Great. Do you have a ballpark of how many people we have signed
That
up?
was 20 as of yesterday.
Okay. We will look forward to hearing from folks tomorrow, and thank you to the agency for being here. We are adjourned.